Five, four, three, two, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Live with Andy. I'm your host, Andy DeBala. We are going to be doing something a little bit different today. I hope I didn't mislead too many of you. Dr. Robert Malone is not making a guest appearance on the show, but we will be watching a documentary made by EpochTimes about Robert Malone. And I did just want to let everyone know that I did pay for it. So, and I don't make any money for the show, so I'm not making money off of your content, EpochTimes. But Dr. Robert Malone made this little apology documentary for creating the mRNA vaccine and what was unleashed upon mankind in 2020. And it's a woe is me tale that Dr. Robert Malone is trying to spin, and he digs into his upbringing, his relationship with his wife, Dr. Jill Glasspool-Malone. She even makes an appearance on the documentary, and they get into the mRNA vaccine and what happened during the pandemic. So this is something a little bit different. It's called a neighborhood watch party, because at neighborhood news, sometimes we had neighborhood news hours where we present different news stories in an hour-length show, just breaking down some shit that's going on in America. Sometimes we do caveman sciences with myself, where I stumble through some scientific experiments, some scientific research, and I do my best getting through it because I'm a caveman. But today we are having a neighborhood watch party and watching this Robert Malone documentary. But before I get into the documentary, I just have one thing to say today. It's a sad day in American history when Nancy Pelosi has to step up to the plate and announce that she is running for her seat in San Francisco once again. I thought we were past this as America. I thought we put Pelosi on the back burner, but no, they have to prop her back up. Mainly because Joe Biden is probably doing so bad, and you never know, he might get impeached here soon. Kamala Harris might be running the show, but we'll get to that at a later date. I just needed to say something about Pelosi. We got these old geezers in the White House. It's turning into a nursing home. Dianne Feinstein, what is she, like 116 years old? McConnell, he's passing out every time he gets behind a microphone. Joe Biden, he's falling off bike, tripping over mic stands, doing whatever that clumsy goofball is doing besides run the country. But we can't allow Nancy Pelosi to enter herself back in the mix. So please, San Francisco, it's on you. It's on you. Don't vote her back in. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We've done a lot of work into Robert Malone. We've dug into his mRNA invention, his work with famotidine, his cooperation with BARDA and DOMANE and Michael Callahan, and just kind of being an intricate force between big pharma and government. He's like that middleman link between the two that always kind of seems to be there when these viruses break out onto the scene, like Zika, Ebola, coronavirus, dengue, and so on. There's always a Malone in the mix. There's a Jill Glasspool-Malone or a Dr. Robert Malone, and right now he's the right wing vaccine like whistleblower savior. I don't know if he might actually be running for some type of seat, maybe president like Vivek Ramsey right now, if the work that George Webb, who's Atomic Live, Neighborhood News, and some other people have done on Robert Malone wasn't being exposed, and his background and his connections within the government and the CIA. If we weren't putting this work and research out here on the table, he actually might be running for Congress. So that might have been the plan at one point in time. And fortunately enough, we here are on the scene. But that, just like Vivek Ramsey, Ramaswamy, whatever, I can't pronounce his name correct. McSwarmy, Vivek McSwarmy. That's what we'll call him, because that's definitely what he is. He has links to being like paid out by Gilead Sciences. He has links to being paid out by Soros. He has all these deep state connections, and all of a sudden he's popping up on the scene here, just as Trump's. They're trying to take Trump off the scene. So this Vivek spot, that Vivek's taking the place. This could have been Robert Malone at one point in time. I just want you guys to think about that. If we weren't doing this work, this Vivek McSwarmy, him running for president right now, this could be Robert Malone if it wasn't for us. So here we go. Without further ado. So this documentary was made on EpochTimes. It is quite lengthy, and it does get quite boring at some points. It digs into his background, but it's like this cheesy jerk off festival of Robert Malone, or on his horse farm. He's I forgot to put my hat on. They're on this horse farm. He's wearing this like French bidet hat, or whatever they're called. I'm not sure. Bidet is like a toilet. He's wearing I had to put the hat on as a prop. He's wearing this hat, trying to look all fancy with this horse farm, and this journalist is just asking him all these like sob story questions, like, "Do you feel bad about inventing mRNA? Did you think this was going to happen in the future?" And he just tries to distance himself from it, even though he's on this like $1 billion horse ranch at the time. But this documentary is called Headwind. It was made by EpochTimes. Yes, I did pay for it. Yes, I don't make any money, so you can't sue me for nothing. Here we go. I just do this for fun, ladies and gentlemen. George Webb might be joining at some point. I'm not 100% sure. He said he might join if the show go as planned and I don't stumble too much through the beginning.
This is the largest experiment on human beings ever performed in the history of the world. The state shouldn't be telling parents that children must be vaccinated. I'm not getting anything out of this. This is not a win for me.
The preservation of our freedom.
I'm pausing it already. I will be pausing this show a lot throughout, just to make comments and put my 2 cents in here and there. But can you just see how they're setting the stage already? Like the music, the tone. He's walking down this road by himself. He's a lonely man in a lonely world, just thinking about what he did creating the mRNA vaccine.
Is everyone's concern.
In Headwind, journalists Jacobine Hausman and Alain Groutars interview people who found themselves in the eye of the storm. In this episode, Jacobine Hausman talks with Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of the mRNA technology.
Welcome to Andalusia, and welcome to my humble farm.
Thank you very much for having us.
I say humble farm because I read somewhere that you have a farm.
True.
in Virginia. And I think it's roughly 10 times bigger than my farm.
Oh, no. Well, it's still a humble farm that we have. We've homesteaded, much like you did.
Yeah.
Only when we...
Just gotta pause it. Just gotta pause it for a second. Who's rocking it better right now? Who's rocking it better? Me or Robert Malone? Just to let you guys know, I had to grow out this beard. First of all, I had to grow out this beard just to prove to Robert Malone that he doesn't have the best beard in the conspiracy game. That belongs to this guy. I may not have the following, but you're goddamn sure I got the best beard. So that's why I have to do this. I just out of principle. Second of all, who rocks a French hat better? The actual billionaire who's comfortable wearing that type of thing, or this guy, the first time he's ever worn a fancy hat in his life? Who's rocking it better? I think I look a little bit better than Robert Malone. You tell me. I'll put your votes on the screen in the chat during the video. Here we go.
Thought that it was raw land. The structures were overgrown, the ones that were there. We had no power, no fences, no water, no sewer.
Not even water. You had to drill a borehole.
Yep,
Yeah.
drill the well. We lived in a office trailer for a while
Really?
with the dogs, and we had what they call a porta potty.
Mm-hmm.
So portable, John brought in, and then we would go to the local health club to have showers.
Oh, right. You were hippies. And just
Well,
made
yeah,
it.
we so I think like you, there was when we were younger, we've been together for so long. When we were younger, yes, we did live rough. It hasn't been easy for us in our lives.
No.
And so
This was before your academic career even started, or were you already?
It's true, but then even after the academic career, those were not easy times.
Starting out as a scientist, you're not in it for the money.
No.
You start out.
If I had been at the
roughing it.
money, I would have stayed in computer science. But I wanted to do more with my life, and I had an epiphany on New Year's Day, 1980. And I decided, no, I'm going to go back to college, and it hasn't stopped since. I was a jerk. That I wasn't valuing people. I wasn't treating people natively. I'm a little bit like many people like me are. We use the term on the spectrum. I'm kind of compensated for that. But I was...
Robert Malone just claimed he was on the spectrum, ladies and gentlemen. He says his actions in the workplace in the past is because, as they say, he's on the spectrum. So anything he's ever done wrong, you can now blame the spectrum. He's probably got Asperger's. I probably got Asperger's. Ask my girlfriend.
was very wrapped up in myself, as many young people are. I became aware this was not a good way to be.
Because at that time, how long had you been together? You're childhood sweethearts, aren't you? 42 years of marriage already.
Plus. Yeah. So we started when we were 15 and 16. Yeah. So when you're young, it's common. Yeah. Most young people don't have much awareness of their mortality. My parents had decided that Jill and I were a loss. And so they had rejected us and rejected me. Wow. Her father, and particularly her father, became my mentor. And really, in many ways, I have him to thank for what I have become. He believed in me at a time when my own parents didn't. Yeah. And so that was a central part of that kind of awakening. My parents were staunch, very staunch right-wing conservatives. My childhood bedroom was painted red, white, and blue.
All right.
And I had a poster on the back of my door of Nixon. My father had built, hand-built a computer when I was a little bit younger. And so moving into computer science was a natural for me. And I learned I was good at it, but I didn't like doing it. It was very isolating here alone. I made a decision that I didn't want to build weapons of war. I didn't want to be part of that world. I wanted to be, I wanted to dedicate.
All right, I just got to rewind it a little bit. I play poker a lot, and you know, sometimes when you play people and they lie about their bet and what they have in their hand, sometimes one of the easiest ones is they take a big gulp. You don't even have to be a trained CIA agent to know this or be a lie detector. You take a big gulp. So when he says he didn't want to make weapons of war, gulp. What do you think? Is he lying or not? Just had to replay it a little bit. Here we go.
But I didn't like doing it. It was very isolating here alone. I made a decision that I didn't want to build weapons of war. I didn't want to be part of that world. I wanted to be, I wanted to dedicate myself more to healing and doing good works. And it was just a personal choice.
Yeah.
I've got a burro here. Well, and a bit about horses.
Can I see your hands if you have farmer hands?
I have, so the last 2 years have been a little rough.
Yeah.
In the sense that I've just got no time. I used to spend a lot more time with the horses.
Otherwise, if it weren't for this cause, you would have been on your farm, tending your horses.
And consulting for biotech and
sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch and just enjoying your days there, right?
And you know, being with Jill and having a happy life.
Yeah, this is a big.
He'd be consulting for biotech. That's what he did a lot of throughout his career, consulting, being the middleman between government and big pharma. That's why he has a big old horse farm he lives on in Virginia.
Big boy. Look at his manes.
He's been rolling in the mud.
He's been rolling in the mud. Yeah.
Hello there.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any. I'm sorry, Mooch.
If you like, later on, I can take you for a ride if you want that.
That'd be lovely.
You still have the neck of that? You still, yeah? Or
the only problem is,
got lost over the years?
So I still manage to ride from time to time, but the problem is I was riding up to 4 a day.
Yeah.
For a period of time, and as you know, if you get out of it, then you can ride for a few hours on day one, but day two
you're gonna walk like John Wayne.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know. Shall we go for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go.
Let's go. You take a little milk in your Americano, right?
Great.
There you go.
Thank you. Jill and I live this intellectual life, and coffee in the morning is part of that. Having started our journey together when we were so young, we spend about 2 hours every morning drinking coffee and just talking about the events. Or we may write one of the Substack articles or post on the social media or whatever, but it's all very interactive. What do you think about this new news article? We'll go over the news of the day or the latest scientific papers and have this intense back and forth where, you know, we're to the point as a couple where we can fill each other's sentences in practically, right? So the conversations are very rapid fire, abbreviated. Jill and I have just evolved to where we have that kind of interaction, and it's always over coffee. But the problem is that we get so wrapped up in the thought world that we forget, and it boils over and it gets burned.
Well,
with
that's a good-
these
you know-
because we leave it on the stove.
That's a good sign. My grandmother said to my mother, if you find a boy, I'm going to send you both to the kitchen. I'm going to ask you to boil some milk, and if the milk boils over, that's this a sign that he's the right one.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah, because then they don't
Because
have
you're
time
lost
to
in
watch
each
the
other.
milk.
Yeah.
They are injecting livestock with mRNA now.
Why am
Probably
I
not
taking
Robert
this
Malone
position
forces, though.
and feeling comfortable speaking out when others are so afraid?
Mhm.
As a young student, I was put into this accelerated track, and I read Cicero, I read The Life of Socrates and the Death of Socrates, I read 1984, I read Brave New World. These texts were part of what I was expected to read on this accelerated track. And this is like 4th and 5th grade. And it got really deep in my mind.
When was this moment that you decided to go back to school?
Part of my internal angst was the rejection by my folks. And I was still seeking their approval at the time. And so I decided to go back to school, and I enrolled right after that, and just turned my life around intentionally. I said, I'm going to change.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I'd lost my soul. I'd lost.
I don't know, why. Unless this is like a Robert Malone paid for, like woe is me piece that he paid EpochTimes to put on about him. I don't know why there is such this like just sad tone to all of this. I just want you to feel so bad for this man, this billionaire horse rancher who invented the mRNA and made a lot of money off of his connections. They're just trying to make you feel so much pity for this man. You can hear the birds chirping, the somber music, the way they're just talking, and just like the soft, low energy. They're drinking tea in the soft morning sunlight. It's just like, what is this? What is going on? Why are you so much on the defense, Robert Malone, right now? Who's attacking you other than some of us small guys like myself? I'm not going to say George Webb is a small guy. He's got some backing behind him, but in some other people, why are you so defensive? We continue.
Who I had once been intellectually. If I wished to be a thinking person in the world and take care of my wife, I had to own that. It had to come from within, rather than expecting things to be given to me.
And you're 62 now. It's almost retirement age.
I don't know if I'm ever going to retire.
No, but I think you probably expected now to lead a little bit more of a quiet life. Little did you know, you're probably working harder than ever now, right? It's been
we often
crazy.
get up. The dogs wake us up about 5,
Mm-hmm.
and the day starts. And sometimes it doesn't end until 11. I mean, sometimes I do 9 podcasts. I've always been hardworking, but my life used to have more balance.
Yeah.
And intentionally, a work-life balance where I had the farm and the horses. Because I have these carpentry skills and have continued with them, I was actively involved in rebuilding the buildings on the farm.
It's now comparing himself
and I have
to Jesus.
These days I can kind of do everything. I do masonry and.
But you don't have time.
It's all, yeah.
You're being lived by.
It's this one thing, but it's not because of obsession.
Mm-hmm.
It's more a sense of obligation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, the sense of obligation and sense of ethics. I want to take you to the source before we're going to get into that. Okay. Let's go. This is the source of the river Guado, and it's originating there in those mountains. There's always fresh water flowing into the valley, and I like to take this water here. If you like, you can fill up a bottle to drink, because I don't like the city water. Do you know how the people are so worried about the virus here, right?
Right.
They call the virus here El Bicho, which means the little beast or the bug. For somebody who has no idea, how would you explain a virus?
That's an important question. This particle is really self-replicating genes that aren't really alive. They exist as a parasite. In a way, they become alive when they get into our cells.
They need a host in order to...
It's the parasite. It is a parasitic relationship. I like to say we are the food for the virus. I think it's really good to think of this as a virus as a parasitic gene that isn't truly alive, but is at the boundary of living and non-living. I mean, there's a gradient. Mycoplasma is more like a bacterium, and yet it's not. Virus is even closer to a pure gene parasite. That's really what they are.
But then again, some people say it's never been isolated.
That's not true. The first paper that we put out on repurposing famotidine, it was early in the outbreak. We had discovered this activity, and my team and I were working frantically to try to understand why this stomach acid drug had activity.
You got $21 million for Trump to run this famotidine study. And we've done a lot of work into this in the past, so I hope you guys have been paying attention.
And I reached out to a friend of mine at Tulane University who works in non-human primates, and we were fortunate in being able to bring in multiple members of the National Academy of Sciences from top universities all across the U.S., UCSF, et cetera, and got them to test these various drug agents against the virus in cell culture. And then my friend Chad Roy and his colleagues at Tulane, who were working on the non-human primate monkey models, were working directly with the isolated virus, reproducing it, culturing it, isolating it. And
you notice how, remember when I said if you're a poker player, he took that big old deep breath right when he was getting into the monkey labs in Tulane. So this is Robert Malone confessing that he was working with the monkey labs in Tulane to isolate the SARS virus with his buddy Chad Brishrosh. I didn't know what he said for the last name. Here we go.
Got them to test these various drug agents against the virus.
And this is the various drug agents. This is the domain program that he was helping develop, where you put the SARS virus into the domain computer model, and it spits out the different therapeutics that could possibly use as remedies against SARS-CoV-2, like remdesivir, famotidine, hydroxychloroquine, and so on. Like, you put it in the domain system and tells you what works or not. And he was on that team. I'm not sure if he was in charge of it or not, but he was definitely working he was working with Michael Callahan while Michael Callahan is in China, according to Associated Press article. And now he's saying he's working with monkey labs to isolate the virus as well.
Virus in cell culture, And then my friend Chad Roy and his colleagues at Tulane, who were working on the non-human primate monkey models, were working directly with the isolated virus, reproducing it, culturing it, isolating it, and actually was under incredible pressure from the White House to get this done quickly, and used.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I do have a special guest that's joining today. Let's bring him in here, Mr. George Webb. He's the de facto Robert Malone expert. So I would say that Robert Malone, like I said in the beginning of the show, Robert Malone would probably be at least running. He might be running for president. He might be running for some type of office if it wasn't for some of the work that this gentleman has done. So we're going to bring in Mr. George Webb. Here you go. George, how you doing today?
I'll turn my camera, see if that works a little better. I'm doing good, Andy. It's been a tough week. It's been like I was at Burning Man, but I didn't get to have any of the fun. It's been 110-degree heat here in Nevada in the desert. But I'm finally happy to say that I am in a decent hotel room. For my flight out tomorrow. So there's good news, and thanks to a supporter who's helping me with that. But I heard Robert Malone say he was on the spectrum. Did I hear that right?
Yes. In the beginning of the documentary, he was talking about his child, or some of the issues he was having, like being just kind of a jackass. So he blamed it being on the spectrum. And
his parents, did he blame it on his parents too?
Yeah, some of they were hard on him growing up. So it's kind of like the beginning of the story is just kind of this like woe is me life story, early life story of Robert Malone. They just kind of want you to feel pretty bad for him, but he's just starting right now. They're getting into the coronavirus and like the role he played with DOMANE and his connections with Tulane and the monkey lab and how they're isolating the virus. So they're just getting into all that stuff. So I figured once I watched it a little bit, I was like, George Webb might want to participate in this, because I figured he'd have some comments to add to the show.
Well, I think this is where he talks about Chad Roy at the monkey lab, and he got signal. Remember, Eddie, when he was running DOMANE February 2020, he got signal from Chad Roy at the monkey lab. Mm-hmm. Now, winding back the clock, you and I were in New Orleans, and remember they went through 40 monkeys or 40 serial passagings of monkey tumors to create various cancers, and they kept taking the most deadly cancer out of monkey 1 and then putting it into a whole flight of monkey second, and then they took the most pathogenic. It was the first gain of function, right? Yeah. For SB40, right? Mm-hmm. And so is that how this happened? Is that what Bob Malone and Robert Callahan was doing in China? Because I haven't heard Chad Roy at the Tulane Monkey Lab. Remember, we went out there to the lab. I haven't heard him say, I already went and did all these experiments on famotidine, and that's why DOMANE ran famotidine. I've never heard Chad Roy since Bob said this with the Irish Spring documentary he's making here. Mm-hmm. I know he's in Spain, but I've never heard him.
Spain Spring.
Have you heard him ever say, anything about monkeys and famotidine?
I have never heard him mention this at all. That's why he put this piece out like right when this was at like the end of April, and this is kind of right when we're all like, you and Kulak and everyone else is kind of starting to discover all these trials and famotidine. DOMANE was already we already like went through that a couple times like throughout like the past couple years, but we were digging into some of this stuff, and I think this was kind of like his like rebuttal hit piece, like woe is me, like sob story he wanted to put out so everyone felt bad for him, and like don't believe George Webb and the boys, and like
well, and he sells $100,000 horses to the royal family, the ex-royal family of Portugal. So He just spent 10 days on a 160-foot yacht off the Amalfi Coast. So he's not doing too bad on that farm he has out there in Virginia with all those horses. But my point is he can't tell the truth. He can't just be straightforward and honest. Andrew, if it was you or me, we would just say, look, here's what I was in this position, and I was trying to find some safe and effective alternative. That's what DOMANE was. The whole country was counting on me. I had this guy who was a CIA buddy of mine. They didn't put it into monkeys, but they, SV40 was 40 rounds of gain of function for the cancer for SV40. But I had a guy who was doing this with Uyghurs, prisoners. He was doing it with all these Uyghur prisoners. He was doing it the last 10 years. They went through 20,000 different spikes. I'd be stupid not to collaborate with that guy. This is the CIA's program to weaponize spikes and to lock down countries. I wanted to find out what they were going to lock us down with, and I wanted to get that information out to the American people. USAID predict, he didn't say anything about that. He didn't say anything about the weaponizing of the Ralph Barrick lab, that this thing could end up blocking P53 and causing cancer. He didn't say anything about the myocarditis, which Ralph Barrick knew about 10 years before. So all the warning signals he kept to himself, which is sort of like the guy who's watching for on the Titanic. This is with the binoculars. He goes downstairs and starts playing craps, Yep. Well, and he guns the engines up to full speed. This is the guy we were depending on to say iceberg, slow the roll on the stuff here, and start distributing HCQ and start distributing ivermectin. So none of his rhetoric matches up with the facts. But I love the hat, Andy. I love your hat, and I love Bob Malone's hat.
I mean, who wears it better?
Yeah.
Mine's a little sparkly. I just went with what was in the closet, but
Well, you wear it with style, Andy. You wear it with style. And Andy, I know I wrote, I've written a lot of books, Andy. 111 pages. They're booklets. Some people call them pamphlets. 111 pages is more like a booklet, right? But
it's more than a booklet. Yeah, it's an actual. Yeah, that's a book.
It's a novella, maybe. So anyway, I've written 50 nonfiction, and I wrote only one attempt at fiction. It was called A Romance Mobile. And it was about a romance down in Mobile, Alabama, between a sort of a Chad Roy gain-of-function scientist, a monkey lab guy at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who had gone down to Mobile, and then a Latipova-type Ukrainian Oconus lure. Now, 25 years ago, 1999, late 90s, was when this is set. Latipova would have been 25 years younger. I'm not saying it's Latipova. You know what I'm talking about, Latipova. Yeah. There he goes. Now, who is this?
This is Chad Roy at Tulane.
Oh, that's Chad Roy. Okay. The guy I wrote about was David Dean at the University of Alabama, Mobile, but it sounds better. A romance Tulane, a romance Mobile. A romance Mobile sounds better. Anyway, but the idea was that he thought SV40 he was trying to figure out how to get SV40 into the nucleus. Because the lipid nanoparticle already got to the outside of the cell, and this guy named David A. Dean was trying to figure out how to get into the nucleus with SV40. And it turns out, just today,
I do just want to, like, in the beginning of in the documentary, he called he said viruses were like, sorry, I wrote it down in my notes and I can't find it. They were like parasites. Like they're like parasites in your system. They need to attach to the cell. They're like dead cells in your system, and they need a live cell to attach to even like do any damage. And is that what part of this is, like breaking into with SV40, breaking into the inner cell walls once it attaches to the cells so it can become active?
Yeah, you can do replication in what they call the outer courtyard area, the cytosol. You can do replication, take over the thing. But to really get into the DNA and and change the organism and make the organism sick for a long time, you got to get to that through the second wall, which is the DNA nucleus wall. And so my attempt at fiction was this second guy, the second monkey lab guy David A. Dean. And I didn't think I would do, and I had a Latipova type character in this story. Latipova today, or yesterday, was on Shannon Joy's show, and she mentions David A. Dean. She mentions the SB40. she, this guy died in 2003. So I'm wondering, like, did I get it right with that one too? It wasn't really fiction. It was, maybe they had a romance. They really did have a romance, because they were. First thing you'd have to do is figure out, how do I cause cancer, right? So you take something that's causing cancer, and then you grind up the tumor, and then you put it in a whole bunch more monkeys, and you take the biggest tumor out of there, and then you put it in a whole bunch more monkeys 40 times, SV40. It's not the 40th simian virus, it's the 40th passage of the simian virus when we all get dead. She said that today again. And now you're to the outer wall. Now you have to figure out how to get in the inner wall. Well, Michael Callahan in the story, in my romance mobile, Michael Callahan then picks up this dead scientist's work, takes it to Birmingham, and puts it through what they call a high throughput system, which is what you're talking about, Andy. You take cells that are monkey cells that Ralph Barrick has made human, and then you have this testing, and it tests 500 at a time. So instead of one Chad Roy plugging 10 monkeys and then waiting 10 days, you have this robot doing 500, and it's dividing every 20 minutes. So you're testing like crazy. Well, damn it all, if Latipova doesn't come on Shannon Joy's show and starts talking about David Dean. So, I think Bob Malone may want to jump in here, but I think Chad Roy may have picked up where David Dean left off. His work was doing aerosolizing anthrax, if you remember, through air conditioning systems, the Schwang-Wu patent. So I think there's a whole bunch of questions here that Bob Malone brings up just when he says the name Chad Roy. Because his partner in all this, if you remember, is Michael Callahan at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. So that's what I would throw into the mix here as you start listening to this.
Beautiful. Are you gonna stay on the whole time? You just gonna pop in, pop out? You can do whatever you want, George. I know this is it's a little bit of, I might do a two-parter on this. I'm not sure.
I'm gonna pop out just because I've been on a bus and it was completely packed, and I'm sticky, sweaty. I'm going to shower real quick, and I'll come back at the end of the show.
Before you go, what was the? I did see you were at Burning Man. You are trying to push this like a little bit more altruistic perspective when we have these meetups. It seems like when we do have these giant concerts, I went to some concerts along Metro. There's always this like kind of like satanic vibes going on with these things. There's some dark rituals, and you're pushing. You were out there, and you're let's push some good journalistic practices. Let's starting to push some more, some better perspectives at these big group meetings. I know that's hard to do when you got all the people trudging in the mud, leaving the event. But what was the overall kind of feeling out there while you were out there?
Well, I think it was a disappointment. I couldn't get in. We got locked out because of the weather, and everybody locked in. Nobody in, nobody out. So it was kind of a bust on weather. But it allowed me to write a lot. I got out 10 Substacks in the 7 days, and I stayed at an incredibly cheap place, $22 a night. So but I think the vibe is, I think this is going to change Burning Man. They want to turn it into this Soros utopia where you'll have nothing and you'll be happy. And they're trying to change it away from billionaires' sex mosh pit where they drug rape girls. And it is that. And they're trying to change it into, now they want credit for it. And I'm like, no, that's bullshit. And what we've tried to do, Andy, you've been to many of these charrettes, is sort of a learning man, which is, let's not drug rape everybody. Let's actually be friends, and let's share news, and let's dig into stories and break the false narratives and put out the real truth for the American people. Wouldn't that be an interesting way to go? and,
Who would have
so,
thought?
well, hey, what an idea! So my idea is compare and contrast. Danny O'Sullivan, I'm sure he didn't get through journalism school, but one of the ways that you show the differences between two things is comparison and contrast. And I want to have something going on the same time as Burning Man to say, hey, there's a better thing to be doing with your time than trying to drug rape some 16-year-old or 18-year-old and get near Ray Dalio, a billionaire who's made all of his money on black swan events and war.
Mm-hmm.
There's better things to do with your time. You could actually be over here trying to save the Constitution and stop the Donnie O'Sullivans of the world and tell the truth to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully,
and you can have a lot of fun doing it as well, and you don't have a hangover the next day.
Yeah, I mean, we had picnic tables floating down the Potomac. We were going to have
Mm-hmm.
a whole armada of picnic tables floating to Washington. I mean, that's kind of fun. They didn't have any water. Well, they had some water, but it was all puddles and urine, and worse, those toilets were overflowing everywhere. And so we want to have it. We want to go back to Stone Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Stone Mountain, Aaron had it there the first time. We had kids, we had campgrounds, we had a beautiful lake, incredible trees, whispering trees, the Georgia pines. We had a lot of recreation. We had the fire. We had the singing of Amber. We had just tremendous good feeling and vibes where everybody was getting up and drinking the coffee in the morning together and working. So I think Stone Mountain next year, unless somebody comes up with a better place.
Stone Mountain sounds good to me, and you are correct. When we travel around the country, I've learned more about America and American history in the past couple of years, just going around the country to all these charrettes, meeting with different people. You're meeting with engineers, CEOs of businesses. You're meeting with writers, scientists, doctors. And you're also meeting with like garbage men, and I'm like a bus station worker, and just like just like the whole array, the whole human gambit, and that's what America's about. You take bits and pieces from everyone you meet, and you try to learn something, and you go around, you get little experts in the community that take you around and tell you what's going on, and it's really a fantastic thing you do. So I agree. We need to bring back some positivity. We need to swing that pendulum away from the darkness to the light a little bit here.
And I want to thank you, Andy, for helping me on that deck in that broiling heat in Michigan for Karma Doc. She had a horrible thing happen with her son, her soon-to-be husband shooting himself and everything. And I just am so proud of you coming all the way from Texas with your loved one to help so much and help Aaron and help all the people that came. I think you came the farthest. Yeah.
Well, Well, Karma Doc does a lot for the country, and you just see George Webb out there breaking his back and sweat just pouring off our brow. And I know you're in the 110-degree heat in Nevada right now, but like 90 degrees in Michigan with the humidity might be a little bit worse. To tell you the truth.
And those flies by the chicken.
Yeah, the flies, the cats, the chickens. It was quite the experience. But
we had a good time.
Yeah, it's a great thing we did, and I hope Karma Doc is enjoying that deck. And when I get back up there, I'll make sure to stop by. But go take your shower. I'm going to keep playing the Robert Malone sob story. And if you feel like popping back in, you're more than welcome. And I appreciate you coming on, George.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there was the great journalist George Webb. He's getting out of the Nevada heat. He went to Burning Man while the people were trudging out of the mud to kind of get the feel of what was really going on down there. We heard there was an Ebola outbreak, maybe a dengue outbreak. We weren't sure if it's true or not. And you can't believe everything you see on the internet. So, George takes upon himself and goes down there. And I don't think there was any type of virus outbreak, but I forgot to ask him about that. So that was that was my bad. And if there was, I hope everyone is all right. But we are going to get back to this Robert Malone video. I actually, if this is interesting enough, if everyone's enjoying it, I might make this a two-parter, because we are approaching the 50-minute mark here, and I wanted you to watch most of this. So we're going to get back to it here for the next like 15-20 minutes or so, and I might break it in half and come back next Friday with the rest. So here we go. He's just brought up Chad Roy and Tulane and the monkey experiments trying to isolate the SARS virus, and he's just kind of bringing in. He didn't mention DOMANE. He didn't say the main domain, but he brought it up in a way saying that like that's what they were doing, trying to come up with different therapies and stuff.
This whole system with this virus that had been isolated, cultured, characterized, and then used to test the activity of these various preparations of antibodies, and has continued to do so, has had some very interesting insight. So this dialectic between a holistic health approach and a industrial medical intervention with pharmaceuticals to cure all disease was actively weaponized by the Rockefellers
To push their agenda.
to push an agenda of a new pharmaceutical industry based on petrochemical-based organic chemistry to enable the production of a pill, a medicine. What I object to is the exploitation of fear around this threat object, irrational exploitation of fear in order to manipulate public behavior, even if it's for a noble cause, even if it's for the, let's assume that there was a true belief that these are perfect vaccines and that this is truly a significant threat and that the vaccines are fully effective and without risk. All of that is not true. I just want to be clear on that. It's so strange that they're attacking you because you're spending hours and hours and hours just trying to educate people for free, the world, that there is so much hunger for understanding the fundamentals. It's so mysterious, this term mRNA vaccine. It's so foreign to people, and it's very, very intimidating. They're not even told what the acronym is or the fundamentals of how this thing works, and yet it's really simple. It can be distilled down to some really simple metaphors, and when you give that to people, these metaphors, so that they can structure their own knowledge space around it by just like the locals thinking of this as a parasite, this virus. It gives them comfort. This is no longer a mysterious threat. And once they have those, then they can begin to process the information and come up with their own interpretation and their own decisions. And I feel this comes back to my bedrock position that people must have informed consent. And in order to have informed consent, they have to be able to comprehend information. What my fundamental position has been all the way through is built on this metaphor. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So these people have not been brought up.
We got another point to make. Oh, it's just Mitch McConnelling out, ladies and gentlemen. Just Mitch McConnell right there. That was actually tough to do for even, it was like 10 seconds. Oh, I hope he enjoyed that pause. Imagine like a guy running for office. I'm going to rerun for this guy. Pelosi, McConnell, Biden, Feinstein, all you other geezers that I can't think of your names right now. Give it a rest. You can at least be like Donald Trump. You know, he doesn't drink alcohol. He doesn't party. Just pops Adderall nonstop all day long. You can at least be like Donald Trump. Doesn't he look good when he's on Ozempic, by the way, ladies and gentlemen? Adderall and Ozempic, 6'4", 215. Donald Trump weighing in, looking good. Way better than McConnell. But there's another reference by Mr. Robert Malone. If you give a man a fish, he'll feed for a day. If you teach him to fish, he'll feed for a lifetime. There's another Bible reference by Robert Malone. See, he'd be running for office, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Asperger's would be running for office. Dr. Asperger's would be running for office. If it wasn't for the citizen journalists out there breaking this man down. Here we go.
In all of this training and discipline that I've been subjected to by choice, but that doesn't mean that they can't comprehend these things. Mm-hmm. And if you help them to comprehend them, and then give them access to the information, and don't tell them what to think, but rather say, here are the tools that you need to interpret this information and make it accessible to you. And then here's the information. They usually can interpret that and draw their own conclusions. And if you do this, people talk about this tension. The threat is the Great Reset. The alternative is the Great Enlightenment. Personally, I'm committed to doing what I can to help advance a world in which people can recommit as they did in the Renaissance in an individual way, not so that the sages in the ivory towers are telling them what to think, but rather empowering them to think themselves.
So, Robert, some people think it's a bit paradoxical that you claim to be the inventor of the mRNA platform that the new vaccines are based on. Still, you have your doubts about these vaccines.
Oh, more than my doubts.
Yeah.
So I'm a professional, and I've invented many things. This is not the only technology that came out of my lab time, and I'm very aware of the strengths and weaknesses of all these technologies. As a consultant, I'm hired
between the CIA.
I have been sought. It's been part of my brand that I speak truthfully and plainly.
What's your problem with the way your technology is being used for these new new generation of vaccines?
Yeah,
what's the problem in
so the way you're phrasing that, I don't personally have a sense of ownership.
No.
I'm not invested in this versus the electroporative delivery versus.
In fact, you're the only one who doesn't
repurposing.
have financial interest in this. You're saying so. This is
so I think a case can be made of the people that are allowed to speak, and of course, I'm no longer allowed to speak in most ways since I've been deplatformed. But most of the scientists in this area that are being interviewed or active in the public sphere have financial interests. They work for, in the case of Katie Carrico, she's a vice president at BioNTech. We hear a lot from the pharmaceutical industry and their scientists. We hear from government scientists. What I've seen is a series of actions that are really antithetical to the principles that I've been trained in, beginning with the ethics. But beyond that is there aren't many that understand the nuances of regulatory science.
I just want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, how he completely he should run for office. How he completely avoided that question and actually named. He just mumbled on for so long you forgot what the question even was. Just talked about nonsense. Or just used a couple big words and put some nonsense in there, and then he named a person at another company, BioNTech, to draw your attention away from the fact that he's not going to answer the question, that he made a lot of money off the mRNA invention. She's like, you're the only guy that has it. And he's like, he wanted to say, technically, I own a goddamn horse farm in Virginia with some acreage. So it's just here's a bullshit political spiel where I point the finger at other people and don't take any responsibility upon my shoulders. We continue.
And clinical development and the technology. That's just a really small subset.
Exactly your
yeah. And so I'm in this position of having fairly deep insight into the way things are supposed to be done.
Yeah.
I've been involved in hundreds of clinical trials. I've worked for multiple clinical contract research organizations that are specialists in vaccines. Often they became specialist companies because I was working with them. That was my job, was to bring them into that space. And so I have a deep awareness of the way things are supposed to be done.
Do want to pause for a moment. This may be my break here for the show. We're about half hour in. But Pete Ross, Malone's job is to convince you that RNA injections are a real thing and not a stupid hoax. Okay. I've seen your comments throughout the show, Mr. Ross. I do appreciate you watching. Sometimes we have different points of views on things. Now, I used to kind of think this stuff too. That the everything about COVID was a hoax. None of it was real. The media is colluding with big pharma and the government to pull the wool over our eyes. The COVID-19 is actually the flu. They're just fudging the numbers, which they did a little bit, but not completely. They did a little bit. Oh, the mRNA is not real. The technology is fake. It is real, whether it works or not. Whether it works or not is a different argument. Hence, the needing of boosters constantly, because I believe we do shed it a little bit. And for my studies, the mRNA and some of this stuff doesn't even back in the day, that was what they were trying to overcome. It didn't last very long. So that's why you needed the booster shots. But I used to think that this whole thing was just shenanigans. It was all fake. We were all living in fairyland and none of it was real. I didn't believe it that much. Like you seem to, Mr. Pete Ross. I don't mean to single you out, but you have been trying to make this point throughout the show, as far as I can tell. And I just want to say, throughout my research and on all the scientific studies I've read, yes, I haven't been there in the lab myself. Yes, I haven't seen seen SARS-CoV-2 or mRNA under a microscope with my own two eyes. But if we're going to believe the scientific research I've been reading on the internet, just to make fun of myself a little bit. There's just been too much money invested in mRNA since like the 70s and 80s, 90s and 2000s. And especially the early 2000s, once like DARPA, and when Michael Callahan takes over DARPA and the synthetic biology department, there's this heavy push towards this mRNA and this synthetic biology. So there's a lot of money, a lot of government money, a lot of big pharma money being pushed behind this technology. And the other thing is, like, SARS itself definitely does exist. There's like videos and demonstrations of Ralph Barrick like isolating the virus. He synthetically, he has a video out there, it's on my YouTube channel, one of like the first videos I posted. You go in the video section, Ralph Barrick synthetically creating the SARS virus. He goes on like an hour-long video breaking down how he created the SARS virus from scratch. And he was cooperating with Wuhan and Bat Lady and sending the samples back and forth because gain of function got shut down over here in America. So they had to go to the monkey labs and the bat caves in China to get the research done. Ralph Barrick, Wuhan. There's Vinette Menachery with UTMB, all the biolab systems that were set up. There's just too much money. There's too much investment. There's too much scientific evidence stating that this stuff is real and it does exist. Whether to the extent that what we saw during the pandemic was, whether it was in like the millions and millions of people, and how it spread exactly, was the virus and the jabs itself. Did they lie about the numbers first, and then once people started getting the jabs, and then that's when they could push the real data? I'm not 100% sure what the real story is, but I do know all this stuff actually existed. It may not existed in nature. It was, a lot of it was created in a lab, but it definitely was on this planet Earth, and there was the SARS virus that spread in, and I definitely think I got it. I got sick during the time. I felt it was different. It was different. You know, you do lose your smell. I was down and out for like 5 days, and it wasn't a pleasant time of my life. But fortunately, I did recover. Unfortunately, I never did take the jab. But thank you to George Webb for joining the show. I am running over my hour here on the television. While late night is striking, I should start doing like a late night show. Start doing a little comedy routine here in the late night, since there's no one else to watch. No Conan O'Brien. Like, there's 16 Jimmys on the late night. I could be a Jimmy. Know what I mean? Forget about it. But I believe Sunday before the NFL games, I'm gonna talk to some people. I might do a show called Conspirasports. I'm gonna need some help with this. I'm gonna go over some of the games of the NFL and the betting lines, and I'm gonna, the winning team that I pick, I'm gonna tell a conspiracy theory about that city or someone that was from that city, of the team that is gonna, like, say it's Detroit versus Philadelphia. Like, I'll pick Philadelphia to win, and then I'll tell some conspiracy theory about Philadelphia or some shit like that. If that sounds like a good idea, and you guys would be down for a listen, I might give it a shot. Actually, I will give it a shot, and then I'll check the numbers. I'll do what the politicians do. You just say the thing, you check the numbers. Oh, that one got great numbers. I'm going to keep saying that shit. Oh, no one liked that. Poor response. Throw that one in the dumpster. We're moving on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good weekend. Go Ohio State Buckeyes tomorrow. Kick some ass. I don't even know who they're playing, to tell you the truth. And let me put the hat back on. See that elf right there? We're going to the Super Bowl this year, ladies and gentlemen. Cleveland Browns to the Super Bowl. Woo! Champions. Ain't no stopping us. Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Myles Garrett, kicking ass. I believe we're playing the Bengals. Joe Burrow and your big old contract you just signed, Joe Burrow. Better be running. You and your sprained ankle you got during training camp better be running for Myles Garrett. Browns victory all the way. Dog pound, baby. See ya.